Leonardo DiCaprio.
I was Ebenezer Scrooge, yo. I was Ebenezer Scrooge because I looked like an old man, grumpy as hell.
We are back with another episode of the Knyck podcast. My name is Nick,
And I'm Dro.
and we got a very special guest in the building. Today we are joined by Mellody.
Special guest.
Mellody, thank you so much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for reaching out. I really, I love the podcast, and I'm excited.
Awesome. Yeah, it's great to see you. Great to hear from you.
Yeah.
And so I would love to hear a little bit about. Oh, I see your dog walking in the background. So cute. What's your dog's name?
His name's Bug.
It's Bug.
Yeah, he's got the little bug eyes. But
That's
yeah,
so cute. Go. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about yourself. How did you get interested in Web3?
for sure. It's kind of a little bit convoluted, I guess. I feel like I first initially got interested maybe 2018, 2019. Was talking to folks, hearing about them like making money off this Bitcoin thing, and I was like, wait, hold on, what's up?
Yeah.
I kind of the thing I typically tell people is I kind of like poked my head in and I was like, what's going on here? And I think at that point it was still, and it still largely is, but a pretty like white male dominated space. And I was just getting out of school and kind of really starting to build out my career. And so I was like, okay, I'll come back to this. Tried to kind of keep, I don't know, fresh and up to date with news that was happening and things like that. And then maybe I want to say like late 2021, my partner was like interested in starting to get into NFTs. They're an illustrator and a designer. And they were like, should I get into this? My answer was always absolutely yes. Like, I think that this is something that could really take off, but I didn't know much about the space at the time. And so I was kind of helping them kind of navigate things. So they would do their reading or whatever. And then they decided not to really dive into it. They're also very into like sustainability and all that stuff. And I think a lot of the news at that time was like, Bitcoin miners are like ruining the earth, like whatever. And I think like for me at that point, I was like, okay, like there is some truth to this, right? But also like the issue isn't that this event is happening. The issue is like how we build, like how this industry works in general, like how we use energy, but whatever. So I think both of us kind of tabled that for a minute. And then really, I would say this year, probably around like April, May, I started hearing about this thing called DAOs. And I was like, wait, what is this? Like, how are people kind of getting together, organizing, largely like, building a fund base and like taking action in X, Y, and Z certain way. And I think that was the first time for me where I had experienced people talking about crypto and using blockchain for like a larger community purpose than just like spending money. And I think that was just like, yeah, this is it. This is what I want to be involved in. I was also kind of at a point in my career where, I could kind of stash some things away. And so I was thinking about investing.
Cool.
And really from there is like when I was like, oh, okay, I'm all in. Let's go. Yeah.
Awesome. That's super interesting. It's funny or interesting to hear about the so the DAOs bringing you into the sphere and sort of the NFTs sort of not being it because NFTs are so hot and so popular. And there's so much I want to get into with that. But you mentioned your partner does illustrations. What kind of illustrations do they do?
So they are like classically trained in like painting,
awesome.
things like that. They moved into the like digital illustration space. I want to say like late 2020, and went off. They do some animation. They are a portraitist. So like there's a bunch of different things. I can plug their website later if y'all are interested. But,
no, for sure. We'd definitely love to hear that.
It's so cool to hear how people transition into Web3, right? Like an illustrator going into digital. Remember our earlier guest in our podcast series, Maddie, was an illustrator who was first kind of diving in and telling us her experience with diving into Web3. But and then funny enough, you mentioned DAOs. We interviewed a guest here who decided to remain anonymous, but as we're speaking to him towards the end, we realized that me and him were in the same DAO. We're in the same developer DAO.
That's
and
awesome.
So we were like, holy shit, we were having a full-blown hour-long conversation. We didn't even know we were in the same DAO. And it was just cool. It was a cool feeling to know, like, oh wow, you get it, I get it. We joined the same one, and here we are talking
never
about
having
the
met
same
before,
thing. Never having
didn't
met
even
before.
realize that.
Yeah, and so
This is
I'm interested in asking you, what about DAOs? Because we've had very little people who join us who that is specifically what had them kind of want to join the Web3. So you mentioned a little bit, you touched a little bit on, why that kind of pulled you that way. Dive deeper on that. What really about that made you go? And then once you were in there, right, what was your initial reaction to Web3 DAOs and all that?
For sure. The only DAOs I truly have experience with right now are Odyssey DAO, X Collective, formerly X DAO, and then I've recently become a core member of Black Creators DAO. So my initial experience was just like, what is going on here? I think that being a person who's like in tech and software, I have always kind of felt like if I had a good enough idea, I wanted to like hit that entrepreneurship bug, but I didn't feel like I was ready, or I didn't feel like I had enough knowledge base here. I didn't know if I, where to find this co-founder, where to start, whatever. And I think I don't know, in my own like knowledge and study, it's really hard for me to not want to take on everything at once, right? Like if I have something that I want to go, that I'm like reared and ready to go behind, like that's me. But at the same time, that's not sustainable for me.
Yeah.
And so I really got into this idea of like, okay, so we get these people together, we can track and maintain our rule set, and everyone contributes. And like, granted, I think there's like some memes going out now, like what autonomous DAOs actually look like, right? But it was just really fascinating for me to like have this kind of almost like company structure, right? Where there is no central leader. Everyone here is like working for the common good of this organization or whatever we're kind of putting our thought, our labor, our money behind. And that was really, I think, like that was like, okay, so here's the like utility that people are talking about. Like, let's get people together. Let's get as many people as possible like onboarded into Web3, and let's see what type of communities they create. I think for me, I didn't really dive into my background. I got started in tech and customer support, kind of moved through ops, and I'm sitting in almost like I like to call myself a product translator, right? Where I have this experience with kind of user-facing roles, talking to users, figuring out like where their pain points are, what their expectations are, where they've like rage quit, like what drew them to a product. But then at the same time, I think for a lot of people, user feedback is, I have gone on a tangent and I don't even know if I'm like answering your question.
Yeah, you are.
But like user feedback is like chatter, right? Like the users don't know what they want, or like if they do know what they want, there's like certain users that we should connect with who are like our champions. And I think that's great. I think you should definitely identify your fringe users, your champions, those people who are like doing things that you never thought about, right? But there's something so valuable about talking to folks who like use what you build every day, like, or they use this in ways that you never really thought, you know what I mean? Like talking to the people that rally behind your product and rely on your product isn't, I think, imperative for me. And so when you're taking that centralized like exec suite out of the equation, I guess is what I'm trying to say. What can we build? Like if to a certain extent, like the users are the builders, then like what happens? Like what does that process look like? And I think that really excites me.
That's cool.
So
the product feedback is right there.
Are the builders.
That's really exciting. I never really heard that before. That's super cool. Could you get into a little bit of each of the 3 DAOs you mentioned, sort of what their central focus is? I know you mentioned.
Yes. Yeah. So Odyssey DAO is pretty popular. They're really about trying to, I think their like core mission, if I can go to the website in a minute, is like onboarding like 1 million users by like 2023 or something like that to the blockchain. And so what they're really trying to do is like break down kind of different core topics and make them accessible for people who are just starting out. So they do like, I think it's like an email newsletter where they'll set up It's like 7 days of NFTs, 7 days of DeFi. And they really try to break these topics down into accessible learning materials.
Cool.
And so they were kind of like the first DAO that I was like really interested in really trying to dive in with their core community. And I've made connections with some folks in there. And then X Collective their whole thing is getting women, non-binary people into Web3 and really making sure that we have pay transparency about kind of the work that people are doing, whether that's in DAOs, whether that's, at different Web3 companies or however folks are deciding to work. They do a lot of really cool like workshops. I've been to a few with folks both in and out of Web3. I think they're a really interesting and then again like accessible way to get into Web3 to really just start conversations. I think that's been the thing for me that's been kind of the word that's in my head right now is freeing, and like that's true, but informative. Like you can read 6 articles about what a smart contract is, or you can talk to someone who is like building smart contracts, or you can talk to someone who is in the NFT space. So, yeah. Oh, sorry. And then finally, Black Creators DAO is pretty new. I was onboarded to them by the former community manager of Odyssey DAO, Contessa. She's amazing. She's held a lot of different Twitter spaces about being Black in Web3, kind of like what it means to have equity in Web3, how we need to leave some of the bullshit that affects marginalized people, especially Black people, from Web 2, and like really just like that shit doesn't belong here, and making sure that we're getting Black voices, other marginalized voices in the space, so that we can really build the type of environment that we want, that we were promised almost in Web 2. So yeah.
That makes sense. Those are really good missions, and I think it's great to have the conversations that you're talking about, because without those, you don't really get the sharing of sort of viewpoints. I saw something recently about like archaeologists, and how like a lot of them, like male focused archaeologists, like back in the day, would just like would say some things about religion or some sort of like sacred thing, and then like once they started letting women into the field, they would be like, they're putting the knives on the ceiling because they don't want the kids to get at them, or like just like other like super simple things, you know what I'm saying, like a small thing. It's like a period tracker, of course. And so when people look at problems from different viewpoints or different perspectives, I think you can get a lot of different insights. And I think at the core, I loved hearing your sort of take on the product feedback and users building the products, because I've never heard that before. I've been thinking about DAOs for so long, and also I think it's important because to have just have positivity. I think that I would love to talk about like crypto use cases and stuff like that as well in a second, but like having possibility and having the right people in the room to talk about those things, and having it really be like a coordination problem, right? Like I think there's so many parts of our society right now that there are coordination issues, right? And people are always like, what are the use cases for this? It's like, do you think we're working together right now properly? Like, no, not really. And so there's a lot of ways we can share moving forward. But you mentioned you're sort of like a product translator. Could you sort of get into a little bit more of that? What does that look like? What have been some of your favorite products that you've translated, and how does that sort of add value to your teams?
Absolutely, yeah. I think I've kind of come to that realization and title definitely within the last year or two, because I found myself, kind of out of college, at this small startup. Working in support.
Also, no, you're good. I was asking, could you tell me what did you major in college, and then like what did you think you might be working on, and then how did you get into it?
Absolutely, that is a great question. So I was a media studies major in college.
Super cool.
And I went to school with the kind of mindset that I wanted to work in film and television. That was always something that was really important to me, and actually, I think this kind of brings me into something I've been realizing recently is like I was very focused, I think from like, God, I want to say like 7 or 8, right? On like I thought I wanted to be a director. And I still, do some dabbling with like screenwriting and, do some videography on the side, but it's not my, my core North Star anymore. Mm-hmm. But I really was into this idea of building or creating for an audience, and not in the sense that, you know, where I talked about before, where like this pandering, but viewing something, whether that's like live theater, whether that's a movie, whether that's, you know, it is really a collective experience. And even if you're alone watching, I think the movie that was like it for me when I was 8 years old was Titanic. I have never been on a cruise ship. I was not alive in 1912, but that, and I have better taste now. Okay.
No, that's a classic. That's a classic. What do you
say? I was so viscerally affected by that story, and like, yes, I was like a 7-year-old who was like, "Oh my god, Leo!"
Yeah. Leo.
But being able to affect an audience who has no connection to that source material.
You're not in the same time frame. You're not in anything, and it's brought you into this world, and now you're so emotionally connected to it. Yeah.
Yeah, that was like I kind of like where I was like, oh, I found a DAO that I was interested in. I was like, this is it. I was like, oh, this is it. I need to tell stories. I need to be able to show people how I see reality. And what's kind of funny is in college, I was very into the VR wave. I was like, oh shit, this is going to be
new storyteller medium. We're moving off the screen into the eyeballs.
Absolutely, you're moving off the screen. Like I remember having. And I got motion sick like the first
time. I get really bad with it too. I can't even play like a first person shooter. Like I'm just like, I'm dizzy. Stop.
Yeah.
Please stop.
Yeah. But like the idea of like putting a person in, like allowing them to become part of a scene, right? That was like, holy shit. Can I curse on here?
Crazy.
Yeah. Okay, cool. And so kind of my thesis in school was like, or, you know, largely for my major was, if my understanding of film is that, you know, we create this kind of shared memory, almost like a shared nostalgia when you view something, or even when you leave a theater, or even when you stop watching a show, there is this like shared, almost like the veil between like what that story was intended and how you interpret it and how you take that with you, like that is really moving for me. And so with VR, I was like, we can create new realities, right? Like this reality that we're in is like
new shared history, new shared emotion. If you put somebody in because I think one of the biggest things that could bring us together, this is a crazy conversation. Like empathy, like causing empathy between people is like one of the most important things. And I think one of the reasons for such discord between like communities in America and like worldwide is it's just people just don't have the experience. Like there's people who grow up in a town, no minorities, no people who feel comfortable exposing like who they are on the insides. You know what I'm saying? People who don't feel comfortable explaining like their gender or sex because they're like worried about, you know what I'm saying? So they never even really get exposure to those things. And if you could put people in a world where they're viscerally able to understand the experience of other communities, it would make it so much harder to hold hate in your heart, to hold contempt, to like hold like apathy for the general like you know causes of issues. And so when you think about like, oh, what's the hard tech problem? Like why doesn't like blockchain or VR or Web3, like what is it solving now? It's like we have so many of these problems that people can dive into. So yeah, I love that explanation. Continue going. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. And also when you said nostalgia earlier, that's a really big thing for me. I DJ and I make music, and my music name, my real name is Knyck with a K, and so my music name is Nostalgia, because it's like my favorite like feeling, and what I try to create with the music I make. Like we should all like be in this moment, realizing that this is something we're gonna want to come back to.
Yes.
And so that's big for me.
That's awesome.
Invoking empathy just sounds so powerful.
Yeah.
You know, just the idea of it. Like, how do you tap into that human element of empathy? How do you get somebody to feel what somebody else is feeling, maybe even not knowing how, like, they're actually doing, right? It's like virtually walking in somebody's shoes, as they like taking that saying and actually going like, all right, let me try walking in his shoes. You know, like that's got to be rough. Like, could you know what comes to mind? You know how grandparents always used to say, my day, I used to walk like 1 mile or 2 miles to school. It's like, could you imagine if you just like showed a kid real quick? Just showed a kid real quick, put on these glasses and let's walk to grandpa's school. You know what I'm talking about? And, like, you walk there and you go, Grandpa did this every day? Yeah, Grandpa did this
you get
every
super
day.
grateful for the school bus. You were waking up early for the school bus. You're like, I'm not walking again, bro.
That's where my mind went. I'm sorry. But, like, that's just so powerful, you know, about, like, doing that. The only artistic background I feel like I have is acting was probably, like, a little bit in high school. And one of the most powerful feelings, I think, was my best night that I performed and I had a character that was an angry protagonist. Was the night that I was actually angry. Like, I was pissed off at my high school girlfriend. Like, some people had, like, done some shit to me earlier, and I was really just mad about that. Like, I was genuinely aggravated that day, and everybody could see it in my face, and nobody was talking to me. But that was my best performance because I was genuinely angry, and it was coming off on stage.
To access that way.
And people were coming up to me saying, "Wow!" Like, I felt it that night, and I was like, "Oh shit, yeah, I really was angry, bro." I was back there fuming.
It was Leonardo DiCaprio.
I was Ebenezer Scrooge, yo. I was Ebenezer Scrooge because I looked like an old man, grumpy as hell. I was like, I actually am grumpy. I'm kind of mad at something, so, like, you know. But okay, no, sorry, we're like
so
going on.
What are some of your other favorite movies or things that you think like give you that sort of feeling?
That's such a great question. I love when people ask me this because my mind goes blank.
No worries.
One I think is like that's like really near and dear to my heart is *Halt and Catch Fire*. There's too many white people, but it is, I think, really a show that. So I don't know if you're familiar, but it is a show that was on AMC. I think I want to say 2015 to 2017, 2018. And what's really interesting about it is it took the slot that Mad Men was in. After Mad Men ended up finishing. Yeah, I know. So a lot of big shoes to fill.
Yeah, holy shit.
And it dealt with kind of like a subset of the tech industry from 1980 to, I think they hit early 2000. I think they hit like 2001. If not 2001, then it's like 97, 98, something like that. And it takes these 4 characters kind of through different, parts of kind of computers becoming, an everyday thing in people's households. And what's really interesting about it to me is I think just how, like we talk about how early we are right now, but the biggest thing about that show is, in my mind, like failure. Like, they have some successes. They, most of the people, on the show end up like pretty wealthy, right? But when they're really like into something, when they're really, their core is behind that product or behind that company or behind that idea, it fails. And largely because they're so early. I think the first season they're working at, like everyone kind of culminates around this small, I forget what they're doing before they end up making a computer. But anyway, something happens where they have to end up pivoting and the entire company rallies behind making a PC. And literally maybe 2 people at the company have made a computer before. Second season, they move in. Certain characters have started different companies. One is like a gaming company. And so a lot of the roadblocks that they kind of work their ways in through are literally based up on the fact that they are too early to something. They haven't done enough user research, or they have overlooked their like early adopters. They have overlooked their core user base and are moving into something that their user base isn't ready for, or that they don't even want. And I think that show kind of, there's a lot of other reasons why I'm into it. I think there's kind of an interesting queer storyline in there as well. There's obviously romance and tropes and things like that. But that core idea that like, I don't know. One of the, I think, big lines that folks use a lot of the time from that show is like, computers aren't the thing, they're the thing that gets us to the thing. And so much of...
so many gems.
Yeah. So much of that is really just like,
damn,
who are we building for? What are we building? What is our purpose?
Crypto's not the thing. Crypto's the thing that takes us to the thing.
Right? Like, so much of Web3 for me is like not just necessarily like, being in it right now and like working in tooling, but like what does what we're doing right now, what are the things that we're going to fail at, like what is that going to do for like us as a society, us as you know, people who, you know, are interested in, are in this space and use this tool, and like what does that mean for 10 years from now, 20 years from now, like how yeah, sorry.
No, this is amazing. This is great. Yeah. Can you tell me the name of that show again and which streaming platform it is? Because I'm about to subscribe.
Halt and Catch Fire.
Halt and Catch Fire.
It is on Netflix.
Okay,
if you're familiar with Lee Pace, he plays like the main character. He's on Pushing Daisies. And then, who's that other bitch?
Carrie Bish.
Carrie Bush. She plays my favorite character on the show.
No way.
Mackenzie Davis.
Mackenzie Davis. Okay, cool. I see it. Yeah.
Who was just in like I think it's like Station 11 or something like that on HBO or something like that. But yeah, definitely check it out.
It's exciting
for sure.
I'm really excited.
I want to touch on something you said, and it really was just something a word I pick up. You mentioned that failure is like a theme of that show, and that hit me right now just because of recent like things where I was having a conversation with somebody who said I've recently become comfortable and no longer scared of failure, right? And my interpretation of what failure means to me, it has changed as I've grown, right?
Yeah.
Whereas and so on that, to tie it in with Web3, do you too here feel that Web3 embraces failure? Because I think one of the things that really pushes innovation in technology is, to me, the embracement of failure, right? Like fail fast is one of my favorite environments to really work in professionally. Is any type of company that embraces failing fast, because they've embraced the culture of allowing their employees to fail, and then also having a structure, a process for them to fix that failure, improve, and the company just understands, okay, we will fail. Let's fail fast. Let's learn from our lessons fast. Do you feel like Web3 embraces failure?
I feel like yes and no, right? I think no, in the sense that there are a lot of, not companies, but I think there are a lot of companies right now who are just dumping employees, right? Or a lot of companies who have maybe not done great things with people's money, or have, you know, kind of lost control of certain things. And I think that people see that in like headlines, and they see that we kind of discuss it amongst ourselves, and like, what went wrong here? Like, this is the reason, like these people here have done these certain things. And I think that Web3 gets held to, like, no, in the sense that I think Web3 gets held to kind of almost an impossible standard. It's this new thing, like things are going to go wrong. People are going to like be nefarious. We have seen that across the board in Web2. We've seen that, you know, in the banking industry. And I think that people, because this is so new, because honestly, not too many people have, I think, a really concrete idea of what's going on here. Like, no one really has a concrete idea of what's going on here, but I think people hear things about crypto and immediately like the hairs on the back of the neck stands up, right? It's like, this is unstable. Like, you know, these people are doing this. And I think that really what needs to happen is that explanation of these events, or even like interpretations and accessible understanding of these events need to be presented in the forefront to people, whether or not they're in the space or not.